Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe back with another episode of Immersive, and today I'm taking a look at Warhammer End Times Vermintide, and this is a brand new title from developer Fatshark. They are the ones behind War of the Roses as well as War of the Vikings, primarily third-person melee combat titles. Now, this one is 100% first person, and I actually think that lends to the immersion factor within this title because it tends to keep the fear in you. If you even think of Left 4 Dead, which is similar in that it's a 4-player co-op game, you're always having to look around, right? You're always having to keep on your toes and think about where the enemies are coming from. And in this title, you have Skaven that can come from below, above, you know, they'll come through holes in the wall, sewer grates, things like that, and you're always having to keep on the lookout, and I think that really adds to it. So I think while some people really want third person, I just don't know that that would actually help the game the way it's designed. But you know, beyond that, for me, the immersion factor kicks in the second you load into your first scenario and you're surrounded by dark city streets. Everything is just eerie and creepy, and just in time for Halloween. You know, October, a perfect month for this game to come out. The title simply emanates Warhammer, and I think that's been a problem with past Warhammer titles, whether they be 40K or fantasy. It seems like a lot of developers just have a tough time bringing you into this universe. We can start talking about obvious elements, the visuals, you know, the texture work, the modeling, the animations, sound effects, great voiceover. That's there. That adds to it. That makes it believable. You know, mixing in the lighting, all of it's great. You know, there's just not much more to say than that. But really, I think it simply comes down to the dynamics that you have with the characters provided to you. Now, in a game like Left 4 Dead, you have different characters, but they don't really do anything out of the ordinary, I don't feel. In this game, you know, each character, in a way, is its own class and can wield different types of weaponry. Now, it's not so drastically different that it's absolutely crucial that you bring one character over another, but I think it's enough to differentiate from each other and make you feel like you're part of an actual, you know, party or fellowship of sorts. I mean, you've got, you know, a dwarf and an elf, which you'll find bickering with each other through voiceover, which is exquisite, by the way. There's some great voiceover in this game, to the point where if you're playing with friends on voice comms like TeamSpeak, you'll almost find yourselves bickering amongst each other. Well, more than I often do with my friends, but just because, for example, here I'm playing as an elven character and we have a dwarf in the party, Rurikon playing the dwarf ranger, and well, you know how dwarves and elves feel about each other, and you actually end up becoming these characters because they're just so well made, the way they're animated. And you know, the dwarf is actually to scale, and if you play as a dwarf, you actually have to look up at the other characters, and so, you know, I find myself making fun of him because of his height and stubby legs, you know, and it's just great when you're having to rescue each other and realize that you pretty much hate each other too, and it's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. We had one scenario where, funny thing was, me and Rui as the dwarf and elf were trying to you know, fight off hordes of Skaven after a rescue attempt, and then the two humans, being Bismarck and Iron Potato, they left us behind because there were too many Skaven, and you almost felt like, is this a racial thing? You know, it felt like we were in The Witcher, where humans hate, you know, non-humans, dwarves and elves and things like that. But I think that's just because Bismarck's an ass, but really, you know, I'll just say that it was because of the game. But all kidding aside, we've been having a blast playing this game. I do have to say that it's probably more so built around the 4-player cooperative experience. You can go in with AI You can go in with complete strangers via the game's matchmaking system, but I almost feel like you're not going to get the best experience out of that situation. I feel like if you're matchmaking with strangers, you're going to get different types of behavior, whether it's for better or worse. I think when you're playing with 3 other people that you know or that you've known for a while, you can kind of, joke amongst each other. You can, mess around with each other. You can, I don't know, perhaps care a little bit more about what happens to your buddy, unless you're Bismarck and you just leave everybody behind. I just think it works best with friends. And I guess you could probably say that about any video game, even one that's just player versus player. It's always better to go in with a squad of people that you've known for a while. People that you can trust, unless it's Bismarck. But, really, I think, again, the game does a good job of providing you with characters that have their own personalities. And they're well modeled, like I was talking about before. Visually appealing. They're already built for you. As opposed to an MMO where you start out at level 1 almost naked, like you have a t-shirt on and some ragged pants, and here's a stick to fight enemies with. I almost think in a way I prefer this because, like, all right, here's your characters. They already look badass. They have awesome looking armor and cool looking weapons, and they're animated well. They look like veterans. They know what they're doing. The animations are fitting. These aren't level 1 noobs that have never fought a day in their life. And so I think that also helps bring you into this game, because you I don't know, you just feel like a badass instantly. All right. Obviously, there's different equipment that you can acquire in this game. There is a loot system. There is rolling for new equipment at the end of the scenario. But I found myself enjoying the title without looking forward to loot. Yeah, we could talk about how the loot system in this title is what differentiates it from similar games like Left 4 Dead, but honestly, I didn't find myself needing new gear. I didn't find myself needing to progress or get to some sort of end game. I think that's what I like about these kinds of games. And we're not just talking about this title, because there's obviously a lot of games out there that make you feel like you already know what you're doing and that you don't have to, acquire anything new to become a better player. But I felt like from the very start, very first scenario, I was this pro, that I was this character that could handle themselves in a fight and was already well equipped to deal with whatever threats came my way. And that's, I think, what I enjoy about games these days. We get into MMOs and we start at level 1, and we're always worried about getting to the next thing, getting that next piece of armor, progressing in a crafting skill, getting to that end game, and then hoping that the end game is good. Well, here is a title that gives you the end game at the very beginning, and a lot of games do this. So it's nothing special or exclusive to this game, but I would say that it's at least another title that you don't have to worry about feeling like a complete noob at the very beginning. Again, yeah, you can find better items, you can find cool pieces of gear. That adds to it, but it always feels like a bonus. I don't feel like, oh, I really, really need this, It feels like, oh, cool, look what I found. And it looks amazing. And you just continue to get even better looking or more well equipped. And it just adds on to the already great foundation. Yeah, is it going to get repetitive? Probably. But what games don't get repetitive? I find that that is something that a lot of reviewers or critics tend to fall back on when they don't have anything else to say. They say, well, it's probably going to get repetitive. What game doesn't get repetitive, okay? It's always going to depend on that initial cost and how much time you get out of that title. A lot of times we get upset if a single-player campaign is only 6 hours. Well, it really depends on how great that 6 hours was. Obviously, it would stink to wait several years for a game to come out, and the campaign is like 4 hours long, and it's terrible, and the multiplayer isn't even that good, then sure, yeah, I mean, there's something that might be considered a problem. But, you know, when you have something that can last you over a month in terms of initial playthrough and then replayability based on difficulty levels and variety of characters, variance in AI behavior, that's not bad. And all things considered, games could actually be a lot more expensive than they are today, you know, with inflation costs and whatnot. And we talked a lot about this in my last episode of the Strafing Run with Bombadil in regards to Star Wars Battlefront pricing. But I think what we have here is a solid, reasonably priced foundation, one which does a fantastic job of bringing you into the Warhammer universe. Regardless of how you feel about, you know, Games Workshop's latest treatment of Warhammer, I would not let that get in the way of enjoying this title, because you can kind of forget about all that new stuff that they're doing and still enjoy this for classic Warhammer, and just appreciate what I think Fatshark has done with it. The only thing that would break the immersion for me, the occasional performance dip. The game seems to be fairly CPU driven. I found that initially my GTX 970s and SLI weren't performing as they should. However, I was able to find a fix for that. If you are familiar with NVIDIA Inspector, if you have SLI, I'm sure that you would be, you want to go in there and select the Witcher 3 profile for this game, save that, and you should get much better scaling under NVIDIA setups. As for AMD Crossfire, I have absolutely no idea, but try that if you're running SLI. You should find that things will then become buttery smooth, even in an intense situation like this. Beyond that, ladies and gentlemen, I think the only other flaw the game might have is that the AI isn't necessarily amazing, in case you're lacking a few buddies to play this with. So it's kind of funny that the best thing about the game is that it's 4-player co-op, but on the flip side of that, sometimes if you don't have enough people that are interested in the game, you're out of luck. And so therefore, just having to put up with the AI, or sometimes complete strangers, isn't necessarily going to provide you with the greatest gameplay experience. But if you are lucky enough to convince a few friends to play this one, then I think you're in for a fantastic time, and especially considering this time of the year. With all of that said, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you've enjoyed today's look at Warhammer End Times Vermintide. Make sure to stay tuned for future episodes of Immersive, and I will definitely see you on the next one.